Hello, and welcome to the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. I'm Dan, your host. You can find me on Instagram at FJ40_UMA_Smurf or on I Hate Mud at Mountain Biker. You can find the podcast on Instagram by searching Classic Land Cruisers. Remember to go to reefmonkey.com to get your Classic Land Cruiser podcast merch. Bring your adventure home with inlowgear.com, your source for custom Land Cruiser apparel and merchandise, where adventure becomes art, designed for the road. This episode was brought to you in part by Redline Land Cruisers, Save Your F, by Manafree, your one-stop shop for Land Cruiser parts and service, by Valley Hybrids and Terrain Tamer North America.
Okay, welcome to this episode of the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. The season premiere of season 4 of the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. I say season 4 because I haven't really taken a break since I started. Now, 4 years ago, this is the beginning of the 4th year, and so I just count years the season. But with me today is a very special guest. All of my guests are special, but with me is Madam President Heather Royston, President of the Toyota Land Cruisers Association. So, Heather, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more, if you can, and how you got into Classic Land Cruisers or into Land Cruisers?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Dan. It's a privilege, especially for the first of the 4th season. That's fantastic. So yes, I'm Heather Royston. I'm the president of TLCA. I've been the president now for I think 7 years.
Okay.
And so it's been a little while, and it's been a fantastic 7 years. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about TLCA and the growth that we've seen over that time. But listen, I actually got into Land Cruisers through my brother. He and I were actually out on a double date years and years ago, and we drove past one of those buy here, pay here kind of car lots, and there was a red 60 series, which eventually became known as Snoopy. And he went back, and his then wife, they bought it, and he started to interact with some of the clubs in TLCA, and we've always been an outdoor family and enjoyed camping and the outdoors, and this just kind of facilitated more of that. So I started tagging along, and it's kind of how it started. And I actually had my first Toyota was a 4Runner when I was right out of school, and then once we got into the the club and TLCA, I actually bought one of the first FJ Cruisers.
Nice.
And that led down the path of many Toyotas and Land Cruisers later.
Yeah, I've had your significant other Kit on before, and that was just such a pleasure to talk to him. He's like, you know what, you should really talk to my partner sometime, Heather. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, and by the way, she's the president of Toyota.
And by the way, yeah, that's me. It's interesting. I have been doing this for a little while, and I'm not as excuse me, public as I would say that some presidents of clubs like that are, but I try to make it to as many events as I can. And my job really as president is to keep this organization running for a membership, right? And so that's my primary focus.
Yeah, So I didn't actually join TLCA right away when I bought my Land Cruiser. I was on Mud, and then kind of through I Hate Mud, I got in touch with the Copper State Cruisers. One guy who had a 40, he's like, "Hey, you should come along with us to this club meeting." I'm like, "Really, a club meeting?" And he's like, "It's just cruiser heads meeting together, and some of us enjoying a drink, and we usually go to a tap house." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll try it." And then later on, I was like, "You know what? I should really join Toyota Land Cruisers TLCA." And so I did, and now I have the dash plaques lining the little the little groove channel on my windshield. And so I have it was the one with the, what year was it? It looked like the top of an inline six.
Okay. I don't remember which year it is, but
yeah, and I've been getting them every year since. And my wife's like, "You know what? I don't have to think about a birthday present for you now because it's on an ongoing subscription. And every year, right before your birthday, your TLCA membership comes out. So there's your birthday present."
See, it's perfect. The auto renew helps with remembering things like that. Although it's our 50th anniversary, so we have some really interesting new stuff out there on the website.
It is the 50th anniversary. And I kind of wanted to talk a lot about that. And yes, we are going to talk a little bit about your classic Land Cruisers because you have quite a collection. You had, because you sent me a picture of a 40, a 60, a 70. Do you have like all the numbers, like a 40?
I have owned all the numbers. I don't currently have all the numbers. Well, so okay, so not all of them. I don't have a 25.
Okay.
And I've never had a 25, but I have a 40. I have a 40 kind of a buggy that I do pretty hardcore wheeling in. I have a 60, a 70. I had an 80. I had a 55. I haven't had a 45. So, and then I've had 100, 200, 250.
Yeah.
So, at least most of the ones that are available in the U.S.
Yeah. So what are some of the exciting things that have happened in this past 50 years for TLCA?
Oh, goodness. That's probably a kind of a long list. TLCA was founded by just a club, right, in California. And it was interesting. We got a note from one of the folks that was around for the very beginning. And they said we would have no idea that it would have gone this far and turned into what it is. So, a small club in California has now turned into closing in on 6,000 members of TLCA.
And it's not just members in the United States, right? It's all over the world.
Yeah, we do have international members. It's interesting because there are others, I would say, like sister clubs that exist in different places. And when I travel for my day job, I travel globally and I try and hook up with other Land Cruiser organizations. But we do have membership all over the globe, mostly concentrated in the U.S., although a fair amount in Canada. And then, yeah, I mean, it's just even really in the past few years, it's grown quite a bit. So we've seen probably since I took office 7 years ago or so, I think we were probably sitting right at around 3,000, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Maybe. So we've nearly doubled, right? So it's good. Trying to add. So back to your original question, it started out as a small club that got together and did exactly what you were talking about, right? We had a couple drinks, hung out and talked about cruisers, did things. They had a black and white kind of newsletter that they started to publish. That was a great big deal. That's what turned into Toyota Trails today. And then, it started to grow, and there were chapters in other parts of California, and then it started to expand. So, now more than, I would say, about 2/3 of our membership belongs to clubs, local clubs.
Okay.
And the others are just independent members. And we have the we have the ability to provide insurance for our clubs for their events. So we have events all over the country. And there's a lot of other things that we do kind of behind the scenes, but it has really changed over the years.
Yeah. I love reading the Toyota Trails. When I get it in the mail, I'm like, first day or two I have it read, and then sometimes I'll go back and reread them. But yeah, it's like within the first day or two I have it read. I'm like, all right, now I have to wait 2 months.
Well, I only know what I write, right? So I know what I wrote in each issue, but I don't know what else is in there because Stan Wright, our editor, and Alex Curtani, who does a lot of the graphics and layout and everything, they are completely in charge of they're the creative geniuses behind it. So I don't really know what's in it either, except for that one column that I write every time. So it's always fun for me to take a look.
Yeah. So what do you have kind of on the docket going ahead for the next 50 years? Can you believe that there's a Land Cruiser club that's could be around for 100 years? That is awesome.
Pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? It is. It really is. It's an interesting time for TLCA because as we reflect on the past 50 years, it's been a lot of really classic Land Cruisers. I mean, that's the whole point, right? They don't make those anymore, which is a bit of an issue for just classic Land Cruisers. So, we're in a bit of a transition where we're really paying attention to and welcoming the newer models of Toyotas. TLCA also just rebranded this year, so you'll notice on any of the merchandise or the things that you see, we're just TLCA, not Toyota Land Cruiser Association. And the reason for that is that, like I said, there's only so many 40s around. So we want to welcome the Lexus folks. We want to welcome, the Tundra folks, the 4Runner folks, the Tacoma folks into the group, because really the rule that we have is that you have to have a Toyota with a transfer case, like a real one, not like a Tercel, but like a real transfer case. So
I've seen those Tercels go in some pretty gnarly place.
Oh yeah, they're cool. No, listen, we had one for a while. I think it's super cool. And I would totally have one again. It was super cool. But that's kind of the thing. So we are starting to, I would say, and over the last few years, we've diversified a little bit to welcome the whole Toyota four-wheel drive family into TLCA. So your question about what it looks like, going forward, I think, we've just recently added a land use VP to our board, and we support Tread Lightly and other land use organizations with our time and volunteer work. We have land use grants where clubs can apply for money to go out and improve areas that we use. We have a scholarship fund that was started a number of years ago, where we give out scholarships to grandchildren, children of members. And I think that philanthropy part of things, right? So trying to improve the areas where we recreate and trying to help our members more is just going to continue to get stronger. So we hope anyway that we can continue to do more and more as our membership increases. We have more resources to be able to continue to do more stuff for our membership. So that's really the goal. So hopefully we have more chapters and we can do a little bit more for the sport, for the hobby, whatever it is that we do.
Yeah, I was trying to get my oldest daughter, she's just finished off her first year of college. I'm like, TLCA offers a scholarship, and it's not like a merit-based scholarship where you have to have such and such GPA.
Right.
And she's going into engineering. I'm like, you should apply for that scholarship. And I sent her the link and everything. And she's like, oh, I'll do it. And she's just like me with ADHD. And then she's like, I missed the deadline. I'm like, oh.
Surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, we do have a lot of kids that do that. We're actually in the scholarship. We're in the scholarship cycle right now. So the the deadline was the 1st of May, so we're getting ready to review the applications that we got. We got actually the highest number we've gotten so far. We got 24.
Nice.
Yeah, really nice. And you're right. It's not about grades. It's not merit based. It's about what kind of a person you are. And really we based it off of Lash Lacoste, who in the scholarship is called Live Like Lash, because we want to encourage people regardless of whether they're going to trade school or college or whatever. And that may have some learning challenges, may have some socioeconomic kind of challenges. We want to encourage them to apply because it's about being a good person and being part of the community.
And that's kind of one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, how have the TLCA members affected you? I mean, because the ones that I've talked to on this podcast, some of them are members of TLCA, some aren't, but for the most part, Land Cruiser owners and cruiser heads are just the salt of the earth people and just willing to help out. So how have the members of TLCA helped you as president?
Oh, goodness. What is that saying? Let me count the ways, right? So I can honestly say that some of the people that I've met through TLCA are my oldest and best friends, who have influenced my life as a person, maybe also as a president, but also as a person, greatly. And I think back to, the first time I met probably people you've had on the podcast, Brian Swearingen, Wood Eve with I Hate Mud, right? I think about the first time I met him. God, I don't even know how long ago that was, right? And I learned so much, not only from being on Mud, but also, from him wheeling together and whatnot. George Esther at Valley Hybrids and Terrain Tamer, one of my best friends.
George is
super great guy, right? It's interesting. So at Valley Hybrids, if their customers spend a certain amount of money, George automatically gifts them a membership to TLCA.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, we have, and listen, I have to be careful because I want to shout out, our vendors and our business owners, equally, but a lot of them do interesting things like that. But, I've learned an incredible amount. When I got my FJ Cruiser, the reason why I bought it instead of a classic cruiser is because I was intimidated by the mechanical side of things. Right? So, realistically, I've always been handy, right? And I can do lots of things. But I had never worked on a vehicle before. So I leaned towards a new vehicle, and then started with the help of one of the TLCA clubs, which is local to me in Atlanta. Started to change it and build it, and started to wheel it more, and do the things. And then I caught the bug, and that's when I bought my 55. And it took me about 2 years to source all the parts. I had a baby in the meantime, my daughter. So that was 18 years ago. And I had incredible amounts of help and, tutelage from the club. So the people are the reason why I am the president of TLCA, because without them, we wouldn't exist. But I do this because I enjoy the community that's based around what we do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the community is, I've never been a part of a more close-knit community of strangers.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a good way to put it.
Because I'll meet somebody with a Land Cruiser, and just the other day I saw a guy pulling into work who had a right-hand drive diesel Prado Land Cruiser. And I was leaving, he was coming, and I rolled down the window, and I'm like, dude, that truck is so badass. I love that truck. I have a
right?
cruiser, and it's just like those chance meetings, and then all of a sudden you're like, I know I've quoted like Step Brothers before, but it's like, did we just become best friends? I think.
Did we just become? It's true though. You see people running around in town. So I live in Houston, and we see people who have Land Cruisers. And we'll talk to them. We're like, oh, we saw you in the neighborhood. You have Land Cruisers. We have a bunch. They're like, oh my God, do you live on blah 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 street? Yes, that's us. Okay, stop by sometime, and we'll have a beer and talk about Land Cruisers. So it's happened more than once. Believe me.
See, and I'm the guy who I see a Land Cruiser, and if I have time and I'm driving, I will follow the Land Cruiser to where they're going. And most of the time, when they get to where they're going, they're like, "Okay, why is this person following me?"
Creepy.
And then I'm like, no, I have a Land Cruiser. I like talking about Land Cruisers. I do a podcast about Land Cruisers. It's all this other stuff. And they're like, oh, so you're that kind of crazy.
Oh, okay. That's funny, Dan. I have a funny story about that. I was outside. I think I was working on one of the trucks or something, and this guy kind of was walking, and he was like, "Oh, you have all these Land Cruisers?" So, yeah. And he's like, "I used to have a 1985, blah 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 blah." And I said, "Oh yeah, very cool. We got one in the back, this, that, or whatever. Cool." And off he goes. About 4 days later, knock on my door. I was like, what the hell is going on? I get to the door, and this guy's standing there with a big tie rod, like for a 60. And he was like, "I don't have it anymore, and I found this in my parts stash, and I want to give it to you." And he handed the damn thing to me. I put it in the house, and he was like, "Have a good day," and left. I was like, "Okay, cool." It's just like random neighbors dropping off parts now. So, but again, it's you connect with somebody over something like this, and it's not like it's a connection that's just based on a social kind of thing. I mean, there's that tangible kind of truck, that thing that you can talk about, the changes that we can make, the adaptations that we make to the vehicles, and it's all very personalized. And everybody's really looking for what's that next thing, or how did you do that, or what made it better, or how did you fix it, or whatever. And so there's so many levels that I think that you can connect on besides just social. And it's very, I mean, it's also, anybody who says that working on cars doesn't require big smarts is crazy, because it takes an incredible mind to be able to figure out some of the stuff that I've seen. So, and I find that super fascinating.
Yeah. Kind of going back to your conversation about George Esther. Last year, today, actually, it was a year ago today, he was in Tucson he was on his way up to Overland Expo, and
oh yeah,
and he met up with owner Azeri, a couple other guys who just happened to be big cruiser heads. I'm like, I would have loved to be a fly on that wall.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, how long are you going to be in Tucson for? And he's like, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, I wish my Land Cruiser was running. I could meet him somewhere. And he's like, well, what's your address? And I told it to him, and he's like, oh, that's not very far away from where I'm at, and I have time before I have to get out of town, so I'll stop by. And when he came by, and I'm like, just totally starstruck, and like, oh my goodness, George Esther is at my house. Oh my goodness.
That's awesome.
I'm like,
come on now, he's gonna get a big head when he hears this.
I'm like brushing my hair, and I said, it's not every day that Land Cruiser royalty comes to my house and looks at my Land Cruiser, and he's like, and he's just so humble about it. He's like, and you still don't. And I'm like, all right.
That's awesome.
But
yeah, that's awesome.
And I'm like, I have to get a picture with you. He's like, really? I'm like, come on. To me, it's you. It's like, oh my goodness. And when he came by, he was just like, I'm like, oh man, he's going to point out everything that I've done wrong on my Land Cruiser. And he's like, okay, I can see why you did that. I can see why you did that. And he didn't point out any of the things that I did wrong. And he's just like, I'm like, this was like core memory for me.
You know what? It's so much fun when you have somebody who knows so much about that. You mentioned owner. I'm going to see owner. Gosh, I haven't seen owner in a few years. I'm going to see owner this summer. on the Rubathon. So very much looking forward to seeing him again. And that, that's the thing about, we talked about, the community. You can go 5-10 years and not see somebody, and the next time you see them, you're like, it's just like they were there yesterday, right? You just pick right up where you left off, and off you go, and that, I mean, that's the way George is, that's the way Owner is, Brian, everybody that I can think of. It's just super easy,
Yeah, and I mean, even just the regular Joe Schmo member of TLCA, they're the same way. They're just, like I said, just salt of the earth people, and again, become quick friends. And it's just like, why would I want to be part of any other community besides the Land Cruiser?
Yep, I agree.
So I got this question from my daughter. She did a report last year for her senior. She had to do a project for her senior high school about community. She asked me about what my goal for the community was. And so what would be a goal for you for the Land Cruiser community in general, even people who aren't members of TLC?
I guess I have a couple, and I think they fall into kind of buckets, Dan, because I think there's a couple of things that are, at least mean a lot to me. One of them would be that people who drive Land Cruisers and who go out and go wheeling are responsible with the land use.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of terrible things, and I've seen a lot of really great things, but everywhere I go, the majority of the time, people say the Land Cruiser people are the kindest to our environment. My day job, I'm an environmental consultant, so I actually lived that, and so that's one of my goals, and that's why we partner with some of the land use organizations more now than we used to.
Yeah.
So that would be one of them, and I think the other one would be that, and it kind of correlates to that, is the giving back part. And we don't really worry too much about that because, to your point, salt of the earth, helping each other, nobody left behind, all that stuff already pretty much happens. But I think that the teaching people about teaching the next generation, right, about Land Cruisers, maybe starting with a classic, right, and showing them how it works. Kids today don't even get me started on driving stick, but they don't even know, cars are so different now. Learning about the machine and how it works. You don't even learn how to fix it, how it works, right? I had a 7th grade teacher that taught us about a combustion engine and took it apart and put it back together again. I think kids need to learn that. So there's some, I would say that would be a goal for me too, is that people don't get disconnected from the joy that comes from being able to kind of drive and work on your stuff and do things in the outdoors with the help of these machines, right?
It's kind of interesting. I would plan a Copper State Cruisers relic run. Seems like I plan it every time. And I was planning it this year. My 40 had actually started working better. I was using it as my daily driver. It wasn't running great. It was running better. And I say it wasn't running great because I burned up a thrust bearing on my way up to this relic run. But before that happened, before this weekend, we had gotten my son he had taken over my Avalon, and my sister, or not my sister, my daughter, the one who's 18, not in college, she had just bought a 3rd gen 4Runner, and it's only a 2-wheel drive, but she just absolutely loves that truck, and she's like, it's become her whole online persona. And my son's like, well, the Avalon is a piece of crap, and it's left me stranded several times. So I want a new car, and the first 4Runner that my daughter and I looked at was this 2nd gen 4-wheel drive 4Runner.
So my daughter drives.
And I looked at it, and I told my daughter, I'm like, I don't, mean any offense by this, but this truck is actually more suitable for your brother, not for you. And she's like, why? Just because it's 4-wheel drive? I said, no, because this one's going to need to be tinkered on. And it's got projects that it needs to be done. And your brother doesn't mind tinkering. He's a tinker. He's like me. He tinkers. And so she bought her 4Runner. And then my son was like, well, I want a better vehicle. And so I'm like, you know what? I've already put in an offer on this second-gen 4Runner. And we went and he looked at it. He's like, yeah, I really like this. And so I went and got another loan and paid for the second gen. And when we were getting ready for the Relic run, because it used to be anything 89 and older Toyota 4-wheel drive.
Okay.
And because of the podcast, people were saying, what do you have against 80 series? I'm like, because those aren't coming on the Relic run because those aren't relics. They're like, they're 35 years old. I'm like, no, 80s aren't 35 years old. Like, yeah, dude,
They are.
My 80 series is a 95. I'm like, huh. So
Yeah.
through a lot of persuasion on the podcast, I'm like, okay, anything Toyota 4-wheel drive, free OBD2. So
Okay, there you go.
if you actually have to like figure out and diagnose it and everything else, yeah, it's. People are like, well, I have a 40 series, but I put a modern LS in it. I'm like,
Okay,
that still qualifies. It's a 40 series.
that's nitpicking. Yes, it's a 40 series.
And so my son's like, I want to come on the Relic run. I'm like, okay, you can. He's like, no, I want to drive my 4Runner on the Relic run. I'm like, oh, it qualifies. It's a Toyota 4-wheel drive, free OBD2.
It does.
And
Yeah.
so he ended up going on it and just absolutely loved it. And that little 4Runner, we put it through its paces and it handled everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
I knew it was a good vehicle because I had a second 4Runner, but this is a good little vehicle. And then
Yeah.
this Tundra that I am sitting in right now, like I said earlier, my 40 is at Higgy's off-road shop in Mesa, getting a new motor put in it. And I needed a daily driver, and I couldn't daily drive the 40 anymore. And so I bought this this Tundra. It had a ladder rack on it, and I'm like, I don't need the ladder rack. I don't want the ladder rack. I'm trying to sell it. And then I started looking at the ladder rack and how much metal it had. And my son's going through like welding courses in high school and automotive courses and everything. I'm like, if my ladder rack doesn't sell, you can scrap the ladder rack and make an off-road bumper out of it for your 40.
Sure.
And he's like, all right. And he basically like sabotaged it so that no one would buy it off of Facebook Marketplace. And so he took the ladder rack off, and he's like, he measured out everything. He cut up all the metal, and it had like good 90-degree bends on it. And so he's already got like the outer frame built for his bumper. And he's just tinkering on it. And then last weekend, we had to do an oil change on his car, and he's like, it's leaking oil really bad, and I believe it's coming from the oil pan. And so we went to a hobby shop and put it up in the air, and he and I worked on it together to change out the oil pan gasket. And it was like, and he's taking ownership of it, and he's like wanting to go out, and he's like, this is a great vehicle to do that. And it's going to prepare him to eventually, when I kick the bucket, he's going to get my 40. So generational
vehicles. You know, listen, I agree. My daughter, when she turned 16, we bought her a second gen. So my first Toyota was a second gen. And I love that thing. And it it was much closer to new back then because it was a long time ago. So I'm also should go on the relic run because that's me. But anyway, we bought my daughter a second gen, and you know what? It has its bugs, believe me, no doubt about it. But you know, she changes the oil. She's responsible for checking all the fluids all the time. She's got the rear window's buggy, so she's got to get in there and smack it a couple times. We're trying to figure out where that short is because there's a short in it, but she's tracking that down. And you know, doing the things like that with kids, even if they're 17-year-old kids. She started working on cars with me. I actually bought my 40 to work on with her. I didn't do that, but that's why I bought it. But you know, going back to when she was, you know, small, 9, 10 years old, she was out there under the cars, changing the oil and learning. So it's a community thing, but it's also a family thing for us, right? So I think it gives, especially when you get teenagers, right? If you can get listen, I would way rather have my teenager out looking at, you know, the car and fixing stuff and coming to events and enjoying themselves out in the woods with a bunch of friends than a lot of other things that they could be up to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that's one thing I kind of noticed about the Land Cruiser community is, I could go to somewhere and meet up with a whole bunch of other 40 series owners, or a 40 and a 60 and a 40 and an 80, but somebody would show up in a newer Land Cruiser, 100 or 200, even a 250. I know it's a classic Land Cruisers podcast, but I do love the 250 series. I know a lot of people don't, but I'm like,
I do too. I love it.
I would totally drive one. If I could, I would totally drive one. I'm trying to kind of plant seeds in my wife that when we need to give her Highlander to get a 250 series Land Cruiser. And my daughter who has the 3rd gen, she's like, I want a 60 series. I'm like, I want you to have a 60 series.
That's funny.
I'm like, don't get rid of your 4Runner, but I would love for you to have a 60 series also.
Yeah, for sure. By all means. I just want my daughter to learn how to drive stick so she can drive all of them, right?
Yeah.
So.
And so the Land Cruiser community is kind of welcoming in of new blood, and especially young blood. Young people coming in. I can't remember who I was talking to on the podcast a couple weeks ago, but like, if you go to a car show and you show up in a beat up 40 or a 60 or a 4Runner or any old beat up Toyota, a lot of the people there, especially the muscle car guys, are going to be like, go away. You have no business parking in the same parking lot as us. And so something like the muscle car guys, their community is really, really small, and there's not really a lot of people trying to get into hot rods, and it's the older guys who have the hot rods, and it's like they look at tuners and they're like, go away. But anybody who shows up in a Toyota 4-wheel drive, it's just like, dude, come on over here, have a seat. I've got an extra seat. Let's talk about your rig and everything else. And so it's like, I just absolutely love cruiser heads.
You know what? And there are more out there than you know. So we have a couple, you know, being in Houston, it's such a big city, right? So we have a couple of, we'll say, regular meetups, right? One of them is Cars and Coffee, which is kind of downtown at the Post, and we've been a number of times, and it's amazing how many, even like the big supercar guys, you know, I mean, I don't even know what the heck it was. It was some kind of souped up Hennessy something, blah 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 blah. It sounded like, you know, it like roared right as it went by. Meanwhile, I'm in my 40 and I'm like, blub, 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 you know, like kind of coming up trying to, but they're like, oh yeah, that's cool, right? So there is something about that classic Land Cruiser that I think that that extends across a lot of the car people. And
Yeah.
there's a smaller one just right here down the street. There's a little restaurant, and they kind of every few weeks they have something. They just do hood poppers, it's called. And we'll drive over there. My daughter will bring her second gen. I'll bring the right hand drive JDM 70 series, and we'll sit over there and have coffee and talk about cars. And it's you're right. It's people have interest in it, even if they're not an owner, right? They're interested in what are you driving and where did it come from and what's the history and all that type of stuff, which is I think is fascinating. I love knowing kind of the backstory and creating a backstory for my vehicles.
You know what?
I think it's part of it.
That is exactly why I started this podcast. I just want to know every classic Land Cruiser owner, how they got into classic Land Cruisers, how they got into their 60, their 40, their 70 series. It's like, what was your path? And then when I'm talking to people about coming on the podcast, they're like, well, I don't have anything technical to say. I'm not very technically minded. I'm like, it's not a technical podcast. It's a stories podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Land Cruiser, and this is what I tell them. I'm like, every Land Cruiser has a story, and every owner has a story, and there's a story about how the two came together, and I just love hearing that kind of stuff. There was a time that I would go to a Cars and Coffee at Top Golf, one of the Top Golfs, and there would be all sorts of vehicles under the sun parked in this parking lot. And Tucson has a big car scene, huge car scene. And at these Cars and Coffee events, you would get McLarens and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all of these supercars. And then you would get project cars that people were working on and restoring. I would show up in my 40 series, and there were literally millions of dollars of cars in this project.
Oh, yeah.
And people would slow down and be like, wait, that says Toyota on it. I'm like, Toyota?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. And then always at these events, there's always people who are like, as they're leaving, they want to show how cool their car is and how fast their car is, and they like
vroom vroom
smoke the tires and like.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell my kids, I'm like, I want to put it into 4-low, first gear, start it up, open up the door, and walk, and have my.
There you go. Just walk beside it. Look at that.
And I never had the guts to do it, and I should have, but it's just like, yeah, I can get out and walk this thing, and it will literally just walk up a wall if I let it.
It's yeah, the difference between a tractor, basically, we've got a 40, it's basically a tractor, and the supercars, it's quite the juxtaposition of technology and not so much. But I think that people who are truly like gearheads and car people appreciate that history, and I know I do. I love to hear. I'm like you. I love to hear stories about, how did you get into this, and where did that one come from, and what's the history on that one, and all that. It's fun.
Yeah, and my wife's always like, "What are you gonna do when you run out of stuff to talk about on Land Cruisers?" I'm like, I don't know, because I've never gotten there, because every story is different, and it's just so fascinating.
It is
to hear all these stories.
It is.
So I came up with this question when I was talking to Michael Emery of Slow Baja, and it has quickly become one of my most favorite questions to ask anybody. But you could have any person you want. It could be historical, it could be fictional, it could be current. Anybody riding shotgun with you in any of your Land Cruisers, who would it be?
Oh boy. Anybody riding shotgun in my Land Cruiser, who would it be?
There was one guy who asked that too. He's like, dude, I would love to have Teddy Roosevelt and would just go to every
Yeah, right?
park.
That's kind of awesome. That's a good answer. That's a really good answer. I think that so I think that if I had a God, that's a really hard question, Dan. I'm like, because my brain goes so many different places.
You just thought it was going to be a nice, easy podcast.
I know. Now you're making me think after a really long day at work. No, it's all good. I think that probably right now I think I would probably choose Marlin.
That's awesome.
Losing him as early as we did, and I've been on the Rubicon with him, and he came out to Texas for the roundup, and he's been to all these events in this part of the world, but he really embodied the whole idea of community. He did the sweeper run on Rubathon for years. Of course, he did his own run, out there, and we lost him too soon. So I'm headed out to the Rubathon, and I will have my daughter with me, and she's actually probably going to be driving, so I'm going to be riding shotgun. But if I were, had my choice and I was headed out there, I would probably pick Marlin.
I was just getting into Land Cruisers, and I've been a fan of Land Cruisers my whole life, ever since I was like 12, and my cousin had a 40 series, and we went target shooting. Forgot something at his house, and so took us on this road to go, and this road went like straight up this hill, and I'm sitting in the back jump seat. I'm like, this is the coolest vehicle ever. It's always been
Ever.
As much when Brian and I, like, that one stings a little bit. That one hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's funny. Sorry, go ahead.
And even now, after his passing, he's had so much of an impact on off-road, not just Land Cruisers, but off-roading.
Sure, for sure.
And it's amazing how just one person can have that big of an impact on an industry.
For sure. I mean, he and I've used this word already, but he was truly a genius at this automotive thing, right? Mini trucks always were his thing. But even still, the quality of what he produced and the kindness that he showed to people, and his ability to teach, right? And the desire to help was so strong. And one of my absolute favorite Marlin memories. We were at the Lone Star Land Cruiser Roundup in Mason, Texas, and Marlon and Christine came out, and apparently, whenever he was around, he would look in, the paper or the old paper and Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and he found himself a mini truck for sale there in town, and went and bought it and brought it back to the park and proceeded to dismantle the whole freaking thing. And it was, parts were going everywhere, and he had other people helping him, and they were talking, and he was like, do this and look at this, and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And took apart and did the things he wanted to do. And then he went back to the guy, and he's like, well, I've taken it apart. You can sell some of these things for parts for probably more, so I'm just going to give it back to you. Give it back to the guy. Parts on the trailer. But people were there to go wheeling, and he seriously had, I bet you at all times he had 10 to 12 people surrounding him as he took that thing apart all day. Instead of going out and wheeling in beautiful, beautiful hill country, Texas, they sat there with Marlin and took that whole damn thing apart and learned a ton, right? So, I mean, there you go. That, and what when you said, what things are so important to me, it's the community, and that's what it was all about. So
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite Marlin stories. Love that story.
I can just imagine selling a mini truck and be like, oh, I finally got rid of that thing. I've been trying to sell it forever. And then, like, 4 days later, the guy brings it back. He's like, okay, here's your truck back in all the pieces.
In all the pieces. Yeah.
I rid of this thing, you know?
It was funny. It was definitely funny.
Yeah. That is an awesome story. So, this might be another hard question. But what is like one of your, I mean, that is such a good memory of Marlin that you've had, but what is another really good memory that you've had in your Land Cruisers?
So, I don't know, probably, had to have been 10 or so years ago. I was in my 40 buggy, and we were out. I think we drug it out to the Rubicon. My daughter was probably 9, I think, at the time, and yeah, she had to have been 8 or 9. And she'd been bugging me forever to drive. She's like, I want to drive. And she's tall, so she fit in the seat and she could reach the pedals, which was handy. So we spent 7 days on the Rubicon basically teaching her how to drive. It's an automatic, so it's a lot easier for her. Plus, she was short because she was only 9. But we spent an entire week out there camping together, and we were on the Rubicon run. But she drove a good chunk of it. So and just being out there with the crew, right? The people who were there, and with her and teaching her, and spending the evenings watching the sunset and relaxing without any phones and all that crap, being able to disconnect with my daughter was super fun. And I don't want to leave my son out of this, but interestingly, my daughter is really into the Land Cruisers. My son is not. He does not have a lot of interest. He's turning 16 and he's getting a Mazda.
Oh.
Like, okay, I failed, but I got one.
Anything else?
I know. Well, yeah. So his dad is a Mazda guy. So anyway, but yeah, that was another one. Was that trip with Margot. And it's especially on my mind right now, Dan, because we're going back this year. She's 18. She's going to college next year.
Yeah.
So we're going back and basically doing that trip again a decade later. So it's pretty heavy on my mind right now as a really great memory.
Kind of along that same line, I was going to mention this earlier, how your daughter's going to be driving and you're going to be sitting in the shotgun seat. When we were doing the relic run, and I found out rather quickly on my way there that my Land Cruiser wasn't going to make it. I called my son up and I said, hey, you need to come back and get me. It wasn't just like something that I could just call my wife and say, hey, you need to come pick us up because I can't make it.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was planning the damn thing. And so I had to be there. And so I call my son and I'm like, hey, you need to come back and pick me up. My Land Cruiser's dead. And he came back and picked me up, and he had a friend with him in the front seat. And so I was relegated to the back seat. And at first I was like, man, do I kick him out of the driver's seat and let me drive? Or do I just ride along as a passenger? And I'm like, you know what? It's his truck. He drove it.
Mm-hmm.
I just sat in the back seat, and I was the communications director and the navigator, and I was looking at Onyx the whole time and telling him where to go. And I'm like, if you get to a spot where you don't feel confident or comfortable, let me know. I can go out and I can spot you. And we did everything. We did rutted roads. We did a wash that was just deep sand, and we did hills, and we did rocky hills, and there was parts that he had to like rock crawl and put his wheel on a certain location, and he was doing excellent. And I was having just as much fun watching him
That's awesome.
drive as I would have driving myself. And I got to experience, and he's gone out with me on several relic runs and just wheeling trips with guys that I work with, and he's been riding passenger or in the jump seats the whole time. And now I got to experience him in the driver's seat. So it's kind of
That's
full
awesome.
circle. And
Yeah.
and I was just like, that was, for me to experience my son experiencing it for the first time behind the wheel. I'm like, that was just as much fun as me driving it myself. And then we get to this one spot because we stopped and there, believe it or not, there was actually a running river in the center of Arizona. Yeah. My
Odd.
funny story. Whenever we go up to Idaho or anything, we'll drive over a river. My kids have been born and raised in Tucson, and they're like, "There's a river." I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "No, it has water in it." I'm like, "Most rivers do."
It's like my kids in snow, right?
Yeah, exactly. My kids
Doesn't happen.
My kids,
Yeah.
so it's the same thing. But we got to this river. We stopped and had lunch, and then after lunch, we wanted to go check out this train trestle and tunnel. And right in between where we had lunch and this train trestle, there was this part that was like downhill stair steps. And all of a sudden he just stops and he's like, I can't do this. This is way too hard. I get out and I kind of walk down and I'm looking at where the line I would want. If I was driving, I was looking for the line that I would go on. And I spotted him all the way down it, and he got down, and I'm like, dude, that was awesome. You like put your wheels right in the perfect spot and everything, and it was really, really cool. And this summer, I'm actually going to Solid Axle. Solid Axle Summit, and Jimmy and Casey are like, hey, it's our 10th year. This is like a big year for Land Cruisers. It's the 10th year for Solid Axle. It's the 50th year of TLCA. What other landmark events are we going to have this year? This is amazing.
It was the 25th annual Lone Star Land Cruiser Roundup.
Another big one.
Was, yeah, I'm trying to think of all of them, but it is actually kind of a big year now that you mention it. But you know, your story about your son and going down those steps and picking a line really does resonate with me about the, I would say, the parallels between what we do with our Land Cruisers and our lives, and why it's so important for kids, because it, you know, you driving up to something that looks really super scary, right? And you have fear, and you think about it, and you tackle that fear, and at the end you're like, well, that wasn't that bad, actually. And oh, by the way, Dad, you kind of knew what you were talking about too, right? And it's a really important thing, I think, for not just kids either, but other people, especially women in this sport, to learn, is it might look a little bit scary at first, but with a little bit of help and a little bit of thought and trusting your vehicle and what you can do, there's a lot of things you can overcome. And I think there's a lot of parallels there between what we do in our hobby and what hopefully people are doing with their lives. So
yeah, and you know, I always welcome the opportunity to have a female's perspective on the podcast, because it's women see everything differently than men see it, and so it's just great to get their perspective. And as I've been talking to you, how your daughter is going to be doing most of the driving at Rubicon, I'm like, part of the reason why I'm going on Solid Axle, besides being invited by Jimmy and Casey, is my dad's not getting any younger. My dad, I can't do the math right now, but my dad he was born in 49. And so he's
80s.
late 70s, early 80s. And he,
Yeah, it's 70, 76. Something like that, yeah.
so, and he's not a big off-road guy, but he loves going out into the mountains, going out to nature. He loves going on the four-wheeling rides with me, not because the rides are fun, but spending time with me. So I'm going with my dad, and my dad's like,
Oh, that's awesome.
he's like, last year when we were in Mexico, we did that side-by-side trip up into the rainforest. I had a lot of fun with your son. Can your son come? I'm like, well, that's the beginning of his senior year. He's just going to be starting his senior year. And my dad was really advocating for it. And so we're taking my son for a week out of his senior year. He's coming with us
Awesome.
just to have that memory with Dad and Grandpa. And I'm like, you know what? I'll have my Land Cruiser working by then. Hell, I'll let him drive a trail.
That's awesome.
Let him drive the 40, and I'll sit in the back in the jump seats, even though I don't fit. I'm 6'2", but I'll sit in the back in the jump seats and let him experience at least one of the trails. And so
Absolutely.
I think
That's
that
great.
I'm going to surprise him with that
That's great.
when we go up there and be like, yeah, I want you to drive this trail.
Do this one.
And
great.
you get to drive the Land Cruisers, the 40. So
That's awesome. It's funny. We so I talked about my brother and how we were on a double date. That's kind of how I got it. He also stayed into the off-road scene quite a bit, and I recall multiple times where him and me and my dad were at different events, and so my dad would go wheeling and ride a shotgun and see what this was all about. And it was super fun back then. Now, by that point, my brother, whose name is Dan, and so he is Dan Kunz of GXOR. So he had his GXs out at that point. So my dad would ride in the cushy rolling sofa of a GX and go wheeling with my brother, the GX Overlord. So GX Overlord. But we spent lots of family time doing that, and it's always really great to get multiple generations out there.
yeah. I say this every week because I'm astounded by it every week. We are over an hour.
I know, right?
It feels like I could go on for like at least another hour talking about Land Cruiser.
Goes like that.
But Heather, it was awesome having you on. Do you have any final thoughts for us?
Listen, I would just encourage folks, if you haven't checked out TLCA, please go visit us at tlca.org. There's a lot of great things that we're currently doing. We've grown, as I said, quite a bit, and we have lots of plans. So the more the merrier, and the more memberships we have, the more good stuff we can do. So and certainly, if anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy for people to contact me. My email address is in Toyota Trails, so it's public. It's president@tlca.org. And I'm happy to help answer questions or whatever. So thanks for having me on, Dan. I really enjoyed it. Time did sure fly.
Absolutely. Anytime you want to come back on, I will make the time for you to come back on, and we can just shoot the breeze again, talking about Land Cruisers more often. So, Heather,
awesome.
Again, thank you very much for coming on. What a great way to kick off the 4th year of the podcast. I'm excited.
4th year. Congratulations.
I'm excited for this whole year. I mean, 50 years of TLCA, 10 years of SAS, 25 years of Lone Star, 4 years for the podcast. Little old me. 4 years podcast.
Listen, we appreciate what you do.
I honestly didn't think I'd get past 4 weeks. And then people on Mud and Instagram were like, hey, that was a good interview. Keep it going. I'm like, oh man, I got to keep this going.
Yes, you do. I think it's fantastic. And we will definitely talk again. I have no doubt.
All right. Well, thank you, Heather. All right.
All right, Dan, thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. As always, remember to go to reefmonkey.com to get your Classic Land Cruiser podcast merch. Bring your adventure home with inlowgear.com, your source for custom Land Cruiser apparel and merchandise, where adventure becomes art, designed for the road. Again, this episode was brought to you in part by Redline Land Cruisers, Save Your F, by Manafree, your one-stop shop for Land Cruiser parts and service, by Valley Hidebirds and Terrain Tamer North America. As for me, the mountains are calling and I must go.